Welcome back to the studio. Up next, we are talking the US headlines. And I am back in the studio with two of my favorite guests. I can have favorites, can't I? Yeah, I think I can. I've got Bussmann, Managing Partner of B Global Advisors, and Brandt, Iden, the Director of Government Affairs of US Sportradar. And we're going to talk about growing corn, aren't we, guys?
Right. We can talk about that, sure.
Absolutely.
I'm only joking. We were talking about that backstage. So tell us about the headlines of today.
Well, you know, I think, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, and obviously one of the focuses of the show is sports betting and online. And that continues to be a driver. Probably one of the most talked about things right now, and especially heading into, you know, a show that I know is near and dear to Clarion, which is NIGA. Is the California ballot initiative process. So
it's going to be a really exciting election year. I mean, I will tell you what, in California, what we do know is that sports betting will likely come. We haven't seen a state not pass something in terms of sports betting when it's been on the ballot. We don't know what that's going to look like yet, which is really interesting to me. But what we do know is that California is a big prize. Everybody's going after it, and this is going to be a game changer for the U.S. market.
Well, and to that point, you're absolutely right. And obviously, we've got one ballot initiative that's already qualified, which is the tribal land-based only. You've got three potential other initiatives out there that could. I only see one of those qualifying, which is the mobile version that the operators are putting forth.
Correct.
I fully expect for them to, in the next couple of weeks, to say, hey, we're ready. We've got the signatures. And then it becomes a duel, and what happens? You know, the question I would say, you know, you said that there hasn't been a ballot issue that's been rejected. One came very close in Colorado to losing, but that's because they ran a very poor campaign and only won by 12,000 votes.
That's right.
And two, we've never had two ballot initiatives in the same state, which could cause conflict.
Whenever we get a situation where there's competing ballot initiatives, you always get potential for confusion. And you get an opportunity where voters go and they say, well, we're not quite sure the differences between these two. We support sports betting, but we don't know really what this means. And if you have a small differentiation to the average voter who just says, oh, one says retail, one says mobile, they're not really following the industry as much, and they just want to place a sports wager, how do they vote? Or do they just say, you know what, it's too confusing, we're going to vote no on both? And that's sometimes, most often than not, that's what we see. And so that could lead to a potential problem in California. However, I remain optimistic that something's going to get done there. You know me, I'm always optimistic.
You are.
I'm always coming after you. I'm more optimistic than you are, I think. So I'm always beating you up.
I don't know about that. You know, okay, maybe I'm a little bit more pessimistic. But you know, to that point, you know, 9 times out of 10, when you have those two initiatives that roughly do the same thing but do it in different ways, people say, hey, I don't get either, I'm going to vote no.
That's right. That's right.
But you obviously have a compelling argument. We'll have to see how the campaigns are run off of it, because sports betting continues to be a popular activity amongst every state. It's one that's happening in California today, just not happening in a legal setting. It's just a matter of who is going to win off of there. And obviously we've seen several of the tribes come together to try to get the potential operator one off the ballot and say keep the California interests the way they are and keep the outsiders out.
Now, how big, I have an idea on this, how big do you think that the California market really is going to be?
Well, I mean, you're looking at the sixth biggest economy in the world, plain and simple.
Yep.
You know, it will dwarf anything. You know, I know we talked about this yesterday with New York and the numbers blown away out of New York and how great New York is. Well, if it wasn't big numbers, that would be the real story, as opposed to, hey, we generated $1 billion this month in handle. That's great. If you didn't, that's the problem.
Sure.
California will easily double that, if not more.
I think so.
So you're talking about votes coming in and changing things. In terms of gaming expansion on a legislative level, do you think lawmakers are seeing it as an opportunity? What do you think about that?
Well, lawmakers tend to, it depends on how the state's crafted. So in California, the reason we're going to ballot initiatives is because you can't get anything done in Sacramento. Plain and simple, they'd never come to consensus off everything. We tried that path. I know there were people that said you didn't need to take it to ballot anyway. I'm a firm believer you had to take it to ballot.
Yeah, I think that was the only way it was going to get done.
And one, it's the only way it's going to get done. Two, there's some constitutional provisions in there that I know some people like to circumvent those, and they continue to advocate in those states. Those advocates are wrong. I won't bring anybody up, but that do that. But you have a state like California that's really the only way you're going to get it done. You've seen other states this year. Georgia passed on it.
Yep.
You know, to do it. Alabama the same way, where legislators will say, hey, we don't want to do this on our own. We're going to give it to the voters. We'll let them decide. Because I may be against it, I may be for it, but we do what we want to.
Well, and you traditionally see that happen more during controversial election years anyway. We're coming up on a big election year in the U.S., and that always makes it tougher for legislators sometimes to engage on some of these issues, which admittedly there are a lot of controversial sides at times on the issue for legislators when taking a vote on this. And so sometimes it's easier for it to go to the ballot in a lot of ways. Disappointing we didn't get it done in Georgia this year. I mean, as you know, I handicapped Georgia early. I thought that was going to get done. You continue to tell me I'm wrong there, but I'm confident that Kansas and Missouri are going to come through in the next 45 days for me.
I will wholeheartedly agree that.
Okay, all right, we agree on that.
We will have the Kansas-Missouri Act.
Okay, all right.
Completed in 2022. So no, that will. Back to Georgia though, real quick. You know, one of the things also that comes into play off of this is what else is on the ballot.
That's right.
Are there other ballot initiatives that matter? What's going to drive voters? You know, you sit there and you look at Georgia. You've got a contested governor's race. You've got a contested Senate race. Granted, you don't have a presidential election, but those are expensive races. That's an expensive campaign you got to run.
It's going to be a lot of voter turnout there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's back to California. It will be the most expensive ballot initiative ever run.
Yeah.
For gaming.
And what is your take on states' tax for legal sports betting? Could there be more of a push for legal online casinos?
Legal online, what was the last part?
Online casinos.
Online casino, yeah. Well, there should be more of a push for legal online casino. So in Michigan, in Michigan, when I passed the legislation there, I tied these two together. I put sports betting and iCasino together for the very important reason that it's a heavy lift to do, as we've seen in a lot of these states. And if you're going to make the push and take the effort to go through and do sports, you might as well do iCasino anyway, because it takes just as much effort, and at the end of the day, it's really where the dollars are. If you have a conversation about two things. One, consumer protections and regulating the industry, bringing it out of the black market, getting it regulated and protecting consumers, which is where we have to start with this conversation. And then, is it good for the state in terms of tax dollars? You can't do one without the other, in my opinion. And a lot of these states, as you've seen now, are going back and now having this iCasino discussion. And now it's you got to push that boulder back up the hill twice.
No, well, and you're absolutely right. But if you look at how the industry has evolved in the U.S., it's first, hey, we'll do slots, then we'll do tables. So the pattern's been there to be able to do this before. The challenge, though, is right that if you're going to do it, just do it all at once and do it right. But as legislators look at it, they look on the TV and they say, oh, hey, there's the line on SportsCenter, there's the line on Fox Sports. I get that. It's part of commonplace. I look at a phone and I go, do I really want my constituents playing slots? Do I really want my constituents playing blackjack or whatever it is?
Well,
it's a harder lift.
Well, there's certainly much more education that has to go on there. And also, you have to have a state that already is ingrained with some gaming policies. I would never say that you could walk into a state like Tennessee that had very little gaming and just say, let's go straight to iCasino. But you take a state like Louisiana with a tremendous amount of history in gaming, potentially, I believe that legislators are a bit more comfortable with it.
Yeah. Well, and I think, to your point, one of the other things you asked about was tax. And obviously, tax becomes very important. And we've seen a plethora as it relates to sports betting, and even more. And I know I give you crap for the Michigan bill that you absolutely
Which is a single-digit tax rate, by the way.
Well, I understand, but you know me. Everybody claims that I'm a low-tax guy. I'm really a no-tax guy.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
But I mean, you sit there and look at sports, and you look at a state like New York that does 51%. Nobody makes money at 51%.
Except for the state of New York.
Except for the state of New York. So, it's not with the people, as Governor Cuomo always used to say. It's actually just with the state.
That's true.
But, you look at much more reasonable tax rates that are in the single digits, that are, not above 15%, because at 15%, that's where it gets very tricky. Whether it's sports or online, that's where it starts getting tricky for operators, which means reinvestment in the market, and it also hurts tax revenue.
Okay, well, what about horse racing, which has kind of been sidelined recently?
Sure. Yep.
Could fixed odds betting become a big growth driver at operators to look at expanding and diversifying? Do you think that's...
Go right ahead.
Okay, I was going to say, I know you talked about this yesterday.
I did.
On
Go
your
ahead.
Panel. I think fixed odds does a couple things for the market. One, first and foremost, horse racing is an industry that is exciting, but needs that new demographic. And if you're a younger demographic looking at a horse race, you're going, how come I don't know what I win until the end? Because they don't understand how a pari-mutuel race works. If you go to fixed odds, it's, hey, I get it at X ticket, this is what I'm going to win, this is what I'm going to lose. Yeah, there's a little bit more risk on the operator side for that, but you're bringing new people into the market. it also then will refuel interest back in the horse racing industry. You know, we're coming up here in, what, less than 30 days on the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the Triple Crown that'll go. Obviously, there's some challenges with it last year. You've had some challenges away. You need to bring new life into that. I will tell you this, for anybody that hasn't been part of a horse race or gone to one recently, we were talking about this yesterday. Go down to Keeneland.
Oh,
you know,
fantastic.
Enjoy the day, spend some time down there, and you'll have a great time. But you've got to know what you're betting on, and people want to look at a ticket and say,
and if you want, that's absolutely right. If you want younger people to get involved, it's a lot easier to make the betting just simplified, right? Especially when for the most part, sports bettors are used to just the lines, right? What's the spread here? What's this here? And when you get into pari-mutuel, it gets a little bit more confusing. There's more maths involved, and so why not just make it simple?
Yep. No, and to your point.
So I think it will.
No, well, and obviously as you've been here, you were a winner.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Great Grand National Day last Saturday. That was good. That was a good day.
It would be great to have both options. Hey, it would be good to have some fixed options for those if that appeals to, and yeah.
Both are important for the industry. To continue to have fixed odds along with pari-mutuel makes for the best industry standards, but you do have to provide both options.
No, absolutely. Well, and part of it is, as you talk about legalization, we look at new markets, you know, we talked about how iGaming has to go back in. Some of these markets you have to go back in and say, yes, we have to allow fixed odds when it comes to horse racing or, you know, any sort of other animal type racing that's out there. Versus if you bring it into the bill in the beginning, then it's there. Name case in point, the Michigan bill had it in from the beginning. So they can do fixed odds if they want to in Michigan, be able to move that forward as opposed to, let me go legalize it, then write the regs, and then offer it to the consumer.
I'd like to get both of your predictions for the rest of the year. You can continue with horse racing if you like, but you can go more broad if you wish from each of you.
Sports, iGaming, any parameters?
Predictions for the industry. Let's do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I will say on sports betting, we will see the Kansas-Missouri Act.
Okay. Missouri, Kansas, Kansas, Missouri. Okay. All right. There's two.
There's two. It could
we
go
agree
either
on
way.
we agree on those two. All right. What's next?
I think obviously Ohio will go live this year.
January 1. I disagree there. I think they'll take it all the way to the end.
They're gonna.
All right. We disagree on that one.
We disagree.
What about North Carolina?
No, I'm still a no.
God, I'm still a yes on that one. I'm going yes on North Carolina.
I know.
I was wrong on Georgia though.
What about Massachusetts?
No on Mass.
Okay, we agree there.
Okay. All right.
California?
I think it gets done at the ballot. I do. I'm confident. I'm confident there will be some resolution at the ballot.
I'm not saying no.
Okay.
But I want to see the race that's run. You've got to both have good races run. Otherwise, it could either be a blowout or a nothing.
That's true.
And I use Colorado always as my example of that was one of the worst political campaigns I've ever seen done.
Well, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
2 days left in the legislative session in Kentucky. We just talked about horse racing. Does Kentucky get it done in the next 48 hours?
Nope.
Okay. I'm with you on that one. So we've got maybe 3 or 4 states that we potentially see. And then I don't know that any will be able to get up and launch by the end of the year. Maybe Kansas, maybe Missouri. Do we potentially see a launch in Q4 there as it aligns with the NFL season? Potentially. Regulators have got to work very quickly, though, to make that happen.
No, absolutely. And to that, then, you know, what we start going into is what's going to happen in 23. You know, Texas, obviously, it'll be on the ballot, or not on the ballot. We hope it'll be on the ballot, but it'll be part of the discussion. Land-based will come into that conversation, too. And then, you know, other states like Oklahoma and...
What about Florida? What's going on down there?
Oh, well, you know, Florida's that long, drawn-out process that's now in the courts at this point. Legislatively, nothing will probably ever happen. So it's a matter of, are we going to take it back to the ballot and try to get it done in 24?
That's right.
And I think they will. I think there'll be something that happens in 24 because the problem with Florida, and I said this after PASPA was repealed, you don't get sports betting done before they passed Amendment 3, you're going to have a long slog to get there. And guess what?
Now we're in the long slog to get there.
We're in the long slog to get there. Yeah.
So there you go. Did we answer any of those questions? I don't know. I think we did. Did we settle on that?
I was enjoying your back and forth. It was good. I think we understand where you agree and where you disagree.
Okay, all right.
That's great news.
Good.
And to go more global now, what do each of you think the biggest challenges the industry is facing?
You know, for me, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, the biggest challenge for the industry is education. Plain and simple. It's us telling our story, because no one else is going to do it for us. And we have to be succinct. We have to be able to defend why tax rates work. We have to defend how it relates to investment, the jobs we can create, whether that be in brick and mortar or online. But it's also bringing forward solid regulation as part of that. But plain and simply, it comes down to education. That's the biggest challenge we face.
Well, you've heard me say this before. The biggest hindrance in the industry is often ourselves. I mean, we don't align necessarily. We've got a lot of stakeholders all at the table wanting a lot of different things, and sometimes we've really got to come together and work it out in our own family before we take it out there. And I've seen that too many times as we get into states where we're not aligned in advance, and it all falls apart at the end. Because that education piece is so important that we all have to be saying the same message. If one person over here is saying something else in the industry, and then there's someone at the far reaches of the other end of the industry saying something entirely different, it creates confusion in the marketplace. And so we have to come together. We have to be aligned on those. And then as we go into states and we advocate, this is how it gets done. This is how we educate folks to move the ball, and hopefully more expansion, more states come online.
Well, and to that, it comes down to revenue for states. It comes down to economic growth.
Consumer protection.
Consumer protection, absolutely, and that's where I was going next. But that's a great story to tell.
It is.
And one that needs to be told. You know, as we talked about it a little bit yesterday. You've got New York that's now going to go land-based. They upped it by a year.
Yep.
But you sit there and you look at a $500 million license fee. That doesn't go towards jobs.
That's right.
That doesn't go towards investment. That doesn't go towards anything. That goes to the cost of doing business in the state. And that's where, you know, understanding what that push and pull is, it's a $500 million that doesn't create jobs, that doesn't go invest in a building, that generates more tax revenue.
That's right.
So.
Brandt, Iden, Brendan Bussmann, still my favourites, I've got to say. Thank you for such a fantastic interview. I love watching you play off one another. I think they should have their own reality show. What do you think, folks?
Well, thanks for having us. It's been great to be part of the show.
Thank you for joining us, and enjoy the rest of Ice London 2022.